The Planet of the Titans. This is episode 71.
You're listening to 70s Trek with Bob Turner and Kelly Casco, the fan podcast that looks at Star Trek in the 1970s. It was the decade that built a franchise.
Believe it or not, Star Trek nearly returned in 1977 as a new feature film. I'm Bob Turner.
And I'm Kelly Casco. Of all of the Trek treatments that were proposed in the 1970s, the Planet of the Titans came the closest to being made.
That's right. And the treatment had been approved. A director was hired. The script was being written and concept art was being developed.
But the project wasn't meant to be, and fans had to wait 2 more years for Trek's return. Well, we'll tell you all about the Planet of the Titans. But first, we need to tell listeners how to find us.
That's right. Just visit our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/70s Trek. And you can also send us an email. You know, that's the thing on your computer. You can do that and send it to 70strek@gmail.com.
You can also find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Just search for 70s Trek. When you do, we hope you will subscribe and leave a comment or a review. If you do, it helps others find the show.
Cal, it's hard to believe now, looking back 40 years, but Paramount could not seem to find a good story for a Star Trek film.
I don't get it. I mean, what were they looking for? They had lots of great ideas from really good people, but they didn't seem to find anything they liked.
No. Yeah, and you know, maybe it was Star Trek's success that actually worked against it. You know, I was wondering if it had grown so valuable as a syndication property that Paramount execs just thought they had to have that perfect idea so it would complement the show, you know, rather than hurt it while it still made millions for them in syndication.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they felt that a bad movie would stop people from watching the show.
And I just can't believe that would have happened, you know?
Yeah, well,
whatever.
Whatever. That's another episode.
That's right. Well, yeah, right. Whatever the reasons were, you know, they finally did come upon a treatment that they liked, and it was called The Planet of the Titans. But before we dive into that story, we should start with a review of the events leading up to the summer of 1976, so we can all sort of get a sense of where we've been and what's happening next. So, in May of 1975, Gene Roddenberry returned to the Paramount lot, and he was going to write a treatment for a Star Trek feature film. And at the end of June of that year, he turned in his treatment for a story called The God Thing. It was rejected in July, and we talked about that pitch and that story in episode 45. And from August to December, other writers were invited in to pitch ideas or to consult with Paramount on a Trek film. So some people came in, like John D.F. Black, who worked for Star Trek in the first season as a producer. His idea was rejected. Robert Silverberg, a well-known sci-fi author, pitched the story. It was rejected. Harlan Ellison, the man who wrote the episode The City on the Edge of Forever, pitched a story. It was rejected.
Unbelievable.
I know. And renowned science fiction authors like Theodore Sturgeon and Ray Bradbury went to Paramount execs and shared their ideas about what would make a good Star Trek film. But none of those ideas go anywhere. Crazy.
Incredible.
In the fall of 1975, though, Gene decides he's going to give it another shot. And so he writes another treatment that he calls Star Trek II. And as we talked about way back in episode 63, this was not the Wrath of Khan, but rather Gene's second attempt at Star Trek. And oh, by the way, it's rejected. January 1976, Gene and his assistant, John Poville, begin writing yet another treatment. It, too, is rejected. I feel like I should have gotten something that just said, rejected, and just kept hitting it, you know? In the spring of
soundbite.
That's right. In the spring of 1976, that thing is out of there. And we talked about all of this, as I just mentioned, in episode 63. This was the third project by Roddenberry that the studio rejected. So sometime in the spring of 1976, the Star Trek movie project was thought dead. And in fact, Star Trek was transferred to Paramount's TV division. That's a head scratcher, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And Paramount began accepting ideas for a Trek project from TV writers. So it seems that Paramount had sort of given up on the idea of a film. And we're beginning to think of Trek as only a TV property. But then, in May, Star Trek was transferred back to the motion picture division. You know, so clearly there were some people inside of Paramount that just didn't know what to do with Star Trek. It seems hard to believe sitting here in 2017, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. I wish they would have called us.
I know. We would have been Johnny on the spot, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, what happened in May of 1976 to have these transfers happening? Nobody knows for sure. And it's funny because the only Trek-related event that happened during this period is a skit on Saturday Night Live called The Last Voyage of the Starship Enterprise. It happened at the end of May, and it featured John Belushi as Captain Kirk, Chevy Chase as Mr. Spock, and Dan Aykroyd as Dr. McCoy. I'm sure you remember that skit, Kelly.
Classic.
Classic stuff. Finally, in July 1976, Paramount decides to take matters into their own hands, and they name Jerry Isenberg to be the executive producer for a new Star Trek film project. Isenberg jumps in right away and hires two British writers, Chris Bryant and Alan Scott, who is not the first Green Lantern, to write a treatment. And they picked these two writers partly because they wanted the film to be produced in England, because they were hoping if they did that, it would cut costs.
Interesting.
Yeah. These two writers had never worked on a science fiction project before, but Gene Roddenberry thought hiring them was a good idea. And he was quoted as saying, quote, "I'm very excited about some of the ideas they've come up with. The concept that only a science fiction writer can write science fiction is ridiculous. Look at me. I came up with Star Trek, and I was a dramatic writer. I wrote for TV," unquote. So in September, these two guys, they go to work on the treatment, and they hand it in at the end of the month. And Paramount's Barry Diller and Michael Eisner love the idea. And on October 6th, 1976, they order the writers to begin working on a script. That's big news for Star Trek. For the first time, a Star Trek script has been approved and has been ordered. So the film is moving forward, and Paramount assigns a budget to the film of $7.5 million. And just around this time, the Chicago Tribune had in the newspaper the following, quote, "Paramount Pictures, after several false starts, finally has given the official go-ahead to produce a multi-million-dollar sequel to Star Trek, the popular science fiction television series that ran for 3 seasons on NBC in the late 60s, unquote. Also in that article, it states that negotiations between Paramount and Leonard Nimoy were being held up. They weren't moving forward very well, and that was kind of creating a snag for the production. So the production wasn't moving forward as quickly as they hoped because Nimoy wasn't signed. And to make things even stickier, the script could not include Kirk because Paramount and Shatner didn't have a deal yet.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes. So here they've ordered these two guys to go out and write a script, and you don't have Kirk and Spock in it. Now, of course, Shatner signed his deal, in the fall, And then the two were ordered, well, okay, go back now and write Kirk back into your script.
Those poor guys.
Seriously, I'm sure they just looked at each other and went, seriously? Come on, guys. So along with all of this activity around the script, Isenberg began looking for a director. Listen to this list of directors that he asked. Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, hold on to your heads for this one, George Lucas, and Robert Wise. Now, it's interesting that George Lucas is on this list because Star Wars had not been released yet. The only film that he had to his credits at the time was American Graffiti. But I think Star Wars, there are a lot of rumors around Hollywood about Star Wars, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they said, hey, there's this guy working on a sci-fi film over here. Maybe we should ask him. And I also thought it was interesting that Robert Wise was on the list.
Yeah, I mean, all big names back then.
Yeah. Each of these directors was already busy with another project and ended up not being able to work on the film. So they asked Phillip Kaufman, and he agreed to direct. And Roddenberry got him up to speed on Star Trek by screening old episodes of the series.
Of course.
Of course. What a great way to do it. While the script was being written and the director's search was on, artist Ralph McQuarrie was hired to create concept art for the film. Now, McQuarrie today is best known for having created artwork for Star Wars in 1976, and that art is credited with helping George Lucas get funding for the film. Now, for Star Trek, McQuarrie created some fascinating illustrations that took Star Trek in a totally new direction. And in fact, you've seen it, Kelly, and I know a lot of our listeners have seen it. It's that redesigned Enterprise by Ralph McQuarrie that is actually the basis for the USS Discovery on Star Trek Discovery. Oh, and do you remember, I think it was early 2016 when Discovery had that first little clip of the ship inside the asteroid?
Yes.
And all we saw was, coming Star Trek Discovery. Well, actually, Ralph McQuarrie came up with the idea of that design of the Enterprise docking in an asteroid. And that's where that concept for the little teaser trailer for Discovery first came from.
Yeah. Well, he had a drawing of that, right?
He did. Oh, it's stunning.
It is.
If you haven't seen Ralph McQuarrie's work, all you need to do is Google search Ralph McQuarrie Planet of the Titans, and you'll see some stunning stuff. He created several pieces that showed the redesigned Enterprise, as we said, docking at the asteroid, the saucer section separating and landing on its own. He had illustrations for the Enterprise docking with a radically different space station, a design we've never seen before. And he also did some concepts for new shuttles. Some really cool stuff.
Yeah, the shuttles are really cool.
So different, aren't they?
Oh, they are.
Yeah. And this artwork, as much as anything else, really tells you how different and fresh this film might have been. It really gives you an idea of where this movie might have gone. And McQuarrie would go on to contribute artwork for Close Encounters of the Third Kind and also Battlestar Galactica after he finished his work on Planet of the Titans. So as McQuarrie worked on his illustrations, Chris Bryant and Alan Scott, again, not the first Green Lantern, were finishing their script, and it was submitted in March 1977. So, Kelly, let me step away now, and why don't you tell us about that story?
All right. So the story starts off with the Enterprise investigating a distress signal sent from the USS Da Vinci. And when they get to Da Vinci's last known coordinates, the ship isn't there. There's nothing there. So while they're doing the investigation, Kirk is hit with some sort of electromagnetic wave, which makes him act really erratic, to the point that he leaves the Enterprise in a shuttle.
Really?
Yeah. So maybe this is, a cheap way of getting Kirk's character written back into the script.
Maybe.
So the shuttle disappears. and they don't know where it is. The Enterprise with Spock in the big chair. They can't find any sign of the Da Vinci, nor the shuttle with Kirk. And, of course, they eventually have to leave. Now, fast forward 3 years. The Enterprise is sent back to that same location where Kirk disappeared. Now, they're there not to look for Kirk, but they're there to look for and rescue the fabled Titans. The planet that they were legend to be from was being destroyed by a black hole. Now, where'd the planet come from? Who knows? We get into that in a little bit later.
And you're talking, when you say the Titans, are you talking about like the Titans from Greek lore?
So let's stop for a second and talk about who are the Titans. And Greek mythology, it's much easier for me to find a blurb off the internet.
Kelly, didn't you major in that?
I did not. But it's very in-depth. I'll just give you a couple sentences here from the website greek-gods.org. And what they say about the Titans is that they are mighty Titans. The mighty Titans were a powerful race that ruled the world before the Olympians. And the Olympians are Zeus, Apollo, Athena, so on. And this was in a time of the golden age of men. They were immortal giants of incredible strength and knowledge of old religion, rituals, and magic. So there you go. That real briefly, that's what the Titans are. So let's get back to the future and what's going on with the story. The Enterprise, after 3 years, it's been refit. It has a new crew. The captain is Gregory Westlake. Now, Spock, he resigned from Starfleet. I mean, he's kind of feeling that he was a failure. He couldn't find his buddy Kirk. Obviously he probably has some emotions about it. So he goes to Vulcan to purge his human half.
Oh, we've heard about that before, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Interesting.
So as the Enterprise is heading towards, the location of the Titan planet, they stop at Vulcan, though, and pick up Spock. And on their return, they discover that this planet, I've been alluding to, that wasn't there 3 years ago. Now, of course, we have the Klingons. The Klingons are there, and they want to claim the planet, and more importantly, the Titans, for their technology, obviously. They want to...
Gotcha. So the Klingons are trying to get a hold of this tech.
Exactly. Now, in the process of the Enterprise getting near the planet, they get caught up in this force field that surrounds the planet. The planet and now the Enterprise, they're all being pulled into this black hole. Well, to try and get some control of their ship, the saucer section separates from the engineering hall, which we've never seen up to this point before.
And that's typically not a good thing, right?
Right, right.
When you have to separate the saucer.
Right. So the saucer section lands on the planet, and the crew is out there. They find Kirk, who's been on this planet for the past 3 years.
Oh, so that's where his shuttle went.
Right, right. It must have been cloaked or something, 3 years ago. So while on the surface, Spock and Kirk, they discover that the inhabitants, the Cygnans, they had destroyed the Titans some time ago, like eons ago.
And the Cygnans are the people that live on the planet of the Titans today, or now, during the movie.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, they're a very dangerous race, and they get onto the saucer section of the Enterprise. Well, to try to escape from the Cygnans...
Do you mean Sorry, I know. I'm like a little kid here. Do you mean they physically climbed on the saucer section?
They actually transported.
They did?
Yes. So they must have the the technology from the Titans.
So right now, our transporter technology, for whatever reason, isn't working, but theirs is.
Apparently.
I can live with that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Trying to fill in some blanks here.
Exactly.
All right. So in an attempt for the Enterprise and the crew to escape from the Cygnons and get them off the Enterprise, they decide that they're going to fly the saucer section into the black hole. And they successfully do that, and it destroys the Cygnons on the Enterprise. And obviously, if the planet gets destroyed. But when the Enterprise saucer section goes through the black hole, they go back in time to the Paleolithic period of Earth's past.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they're orbiting Earth. They go to the surface of the planet of Earth, and they teach Paleolithic man how to make fire, similar to the Titan Prometheus.
Oh, I'm starting to think I think I know what's going on here.
Yeah. So guess what? The crew of the Enterprise is really the Titans.
How about that?
Yeah. So there you go. There's that treatment.
That's a neat idea.
It is.
It is. I would have liked to have seen that movie.
I would have paid money to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I'll bet you there are a lot of Trek fans listening that might have wanted to see that movie too.
Well, and think about this. It's done by a couple guys that didn't do sci-fi.
Right. Well, I want to see it. You want to see it. I'm betting there are fans that want to see it. So after The Planet of Titans was submitted in March 1977, it was rejected in April.
Of course.
Jeez.
Of course.
The exact reason why the script was rejected, it seems to have been lost over the years. But Kaufman didn't want this project to die. That's the director. So he jumped in and started rewriting the script in May, hoping to get it accepted. So he turns in a different version of The Planet of the Titans. It's rejected too. Paramount can't seem to find the idea that they want. They're losing hope in Star Trek as a vehicle as well. And right after Kaufman delivers his rewritten script, they permanently cancel Planet of the Titans. It's dead.
Now, have you ever seen anywhere what Kaufman did?
What his changes were?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I looked too. I was hoping maybe we could see a version of it, but I can't find it.
It'd be interesting.
It sure would. So, life is funny how it gives you what you think is the right answer in one moment, and just a few days later, you realize it's the wrong answer. A funny thing happened after Paramount cancels Planet of the Titans. A little movie called Star Wars opened on May 25th, and Hollywood seemed to change overnight. Michael Eisner, he saw the film, and he was dumbstruck. He has this quote, "That could have been us," unquote. So Paramount execs are kind of like, we missed the boat. Star Wars is just this fluke, and now sci-fi fans have seen their sci-fi movie, and they won't need to see another one for quite some time. They won't spend any more money on another sci-fi film.
Wrong.
Oh, big wrong, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. So Paramount now thinks, we missed our chance, and the Star Trek film gets shifted to the back burner.
Oh my God.
It's no longer on their radar after the success of Star Wars.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. So what happens next is a story for another episode. Next week, a cultural phenomenon takes on a cultural phenomenon.
It's Saturday Night Live and the last voyage of the Starship Enterprise. See you then.
Thanks for listening to 70s Trek, an independent fan production. Join us next week as we explore more about the production, the actors, the producers, and the influencers of Star Trek in the lost decade of the 1970s on 70s Trek.